What is up, my beautiful DDD fam? It's your boy Drip back with another video. And today's video, oh boy, am I excited to bring you guys this profile. We finally are back at full power, baby, and we went home. Like Dorothy, we clicked our heels 3 times when we went back to Kansas. Shout outs to you if you're from Kansas. But no, guys, if you don't know, Invoked Shaddoll is basically back at full power. Granted, it was kind of semi full power anyways. The only thing we really got back was the third Nadir. But with that being said, like the third Nadir did matter. I felt it. I felt the consistency hit hard. It really hit hard. At least with me, it did. I had really bad luck with it. But now that it's back at 3, like if it's, I don't know, it just feels like home. So, and on top of that, the format that we were in the last time I played this deck, it was kind of not so much of an Alistair format. Alistair couldn't really live because his little brother Aliber was running the show, and he was kind of running things over there. So, but I do think Alistair is just as good as Aliber. So, and that's just coming from me. I love both of them to death. I love Branded and I love Shaddoll's. If you know, you know. But anyways, guys, I took this deck down to locals and did pretty well, and then I've been playing online with it, and it's been doing very well online. For the most part, like even when we got the deck back at full power, I pretty much knew what I was going to run. I guess that's how most people are when they run a deck or they run an archetype long enough. They just know what cards that work with it that can float in and out of formats, if that makes sense. So before I even put the list together, I had one together in my head of what I kind of wanted, and then I put it together, play test it, and it's pretty much exactly where I want it to be, at least for this upcoming format. Now, one thing I will say is I definitely do think that this deck can make a big splash in this format. I really think it can be tier 1. Even with the new decks coming out, I think it could still be tier 1, tier 1.5, maybe tier 2. Maybe tier 2 if everything is like kind of power crap, but I still think it's tier 1.5. Even then, I wouldn't necessarily push it to tier 2, and that could potentially be my biased opinion, but that's just me. But this deck is absolutely disgusting, and when I picked the deck back up, I was like, oh my gosh, I miss this deck so much. But this deck is very explosive. But before we get into this deck profile, guys, I will say, if you don't mind, please hit that like button if you haven't already. Hit the subscribe button and hit the bell notification so you never miss an upload. Let's keep chugging along and growing our family, growing our DDD fam. I love seeing all new faces, even old faces. I like just seeing and talking to all of you guys. Also, check the description down below for all the ways to support me, whether it's just PayPal, Discord. You want to come even closer to DD fam and just want to talk to the rest of us who enjoy the content that I bring you guys. There's that down below too. And if you want even closer to myself personally, I have a Patreon down below if you want help with deck building, um, uh, just learning the whole entire game, or picking my brain in depth more than you could potentially do in the Discord and stuff like that. There's all that way, different ways to support me down below, and I love you guys for any ounce of it. So, but with that being said, let's go ahead and move into this deck profile, guys. I won't keep you waiting any longer. Um, start out. It's like I said, most of the list is going to be fairly standard. It's just basically format based, pretty much. We got 3 Starboy, Alistair, Alistar, not the freaking Link 2 trash card. 3 Meltdown, standard. Let me zoom in a little bit. Right there. I'll put it back at 3. Whatever. This is basically standard. It's been standard since almost the dawning of time. Not much needed to be said here. Alistair is important. Meltdown's important. Invocation's important, but you do not really want to see it that much unless your opponent has Valor or Ash or something, and then you see it in hand. But only true Invoke duels draw the invocation when they have that hand trap in hand anyway, so it's okay. Moving on to the obvious, we got Bay, Ecclesia, Fleur de Lis, and then the 3 Nadir Servant. This is basically standard. I love you guys, but and when I say this, I'm talking about DD fam, and just any other average duelist who's not part of the DD fam yet, but they need to by hitting that subscribe button, please. Heart face, heart emoji. If you're still running Maximus at this point in time, like what I mean by this point in time and like this deck's life, then something's wrong with you because you don't really need that card. And definitely in this, like not just this format, but the way the game's progressed, too many decks get too many pluses by you sending their stuff to the graveyard. You allowing your opponent to send stuff to the graveyard is equivalent to playing against tier limits who's making a window on turn 0. That's how much you are allowing them the plus on your turn. If you win the die roll and you're going first, Maximus is so power corrupt, it's absolutely ridiculous. As in, like it's just not that good anymore. But it's not. I'm not taking anything away from the card. Is absolutely busted, and it is a consistency card. But the deck alone is consistent as enough as it is. It doesn't need no extra oomph. Um, but this is the basic standard ratios. On top of that, Maximus requires you to run 2 extra cards in your extra deck. That's unnecessary. 1 to 2 extra cards, that is. Which in this extra deck is absolutely tight because if you haven't seen my deck profiles, I do run actual Shaddolls. I'm not Wind to Turbo because that deck is fucking ass. I'm sorry if you run it or like that build, but you're not going to find that build here. At least not unless there's something that happens when like just running Invoked Dogmatika, because I wouldn't call that Shaddolls. I just call it Invoked Dogmatika, but this is Invoked Dogmatika Shaddolls. So, but the actual Shaddolls give you so much utility, it's absolutely ridiculous. So there's no reason not to run them. Every time I play against even back in the day when this deck was like the deck, every time I would play against a version that wasn't playing Shaddolls, I just straight fucking clapped him every time. It's like free real estate. It's absolutely gross. And I'm not trying to take anything away from them. It's just taking away from that deck. That deck cannot compete with this deck because the utility that the actual Shaddolls provide. But yeah, shout out to Konami for giving us our third Endear back. Should never went to freaking 2 in the first place. And then shout out to my boy teammate Jeremy for giving me the ultras and allow me to use his other secret since I accidentally traded my second secret to my buddy, and when I thought it was my spare because I forgot that I sold my third secret when I went to regionals. So shout outs to you, Jeremy. But yeah, moving on to the actual Shaddoll lineup. Shaddoll lineup is basically standard: 2 Rush, 1 Squam, 1 Beast, 1 Hedgehog, 1 Aerial, 1 Dragon, and 1 Falco. If you know me, when you're running between, I always run my decks between 40 to 45. I usually don't like to go over 45. It gives me anxiety. I don't like it. In a 40 to 45 card Shaddoll deck, you do not need more than 8 or 9 Shaddolls. And this will always be my ratio. And the only one I would potentially ever run a second one of would be Squam, but you don't really need a second Squam. Windy is a lot more important. But with anybody, take this to heart mathematically. If you're running 40 to 45 cards in your main deck, you do not need more than 8 to 9 Shaddolls. And these ratios are the best ratios if you're running 40 to 45 because the Windy does come up. Now, if you're running the branded version of Shaddolls, like you're running branded Shaddolls, then switch these 2 around. Run 2 Squam and 1 Windy. The reason why is because in the branded version, attributes matter more. As of where this one, it doesn't really matter because they all float and they all work together anyways. And you'll never need a second Squam when you're already running 2 Construct. The only reason I even say run 2 Squam in the branded build is because it's a dark, not the fact that you need the extra dump because you really don't. Um, but yeah. But yeah, 2 Windy. On top of that, spoiler alert, we're running Raijin because you need to run Raijin in this upcoming format because bird flu is going to be everywhere. Not really everywhere, but it's going to be a very prevalent deck. So you're going to need to have something to out. And running the second Windy actually saved me when I was at locals the other day because sure enough, I played against birds. And the Windy helped me make Raijin. Just Raijin in general helped me get there. And you want to maximize the consistency of seeing a win so you can get into Raijin. Squam, like I said, you don't need more than 1. And then the rest of these are standard. A lot of people don't run Falco, and it hurts my feelings because Falco is absolutely disgusting. Because if you ever want to run extra copies of any of these, Falco is literally any copy of these plus your extra deck ones, and he helps. It makes it harder for your opponent to push through your board because if you use like if you already have like everything you need online, and you can just use Windy to summon this from deck, and then if they attack this, then or pop it or whatever, this will either summon itself or summon something back, which makes it even harder to push through your boards, which is like really significant in here in the past few formats. Moving on to the actual Shaddoll spells. I should have put this with the cards, but three fusion, 1L. I was running 2L until I realized mathematically it was kind of incorrect because every time I would see L when I was running 2, I wouldn't see a Shaddoll or a way to fuse, so it was kind of dead. But I think my last build I actually wasn't even running L. I can't remember. It's been like 6, 7 months since I've shown you guys the last build. Um, but the L is actually very crucial now, considering like anti spell, which was kind of around then, back around in January, February area. But also with the potential of Tearlaments still being able to Eradicator you, you need to have a way to kind of fuse. But there's not a reason to run a second copy of this because through play testing, it very rarely ever happened where I had L and a way to make a fusion. So the one is good enough as it is, I promise you. And because you have this, plus you also have Super Poly as quick play. Granted, they might not have a target, but you have player priority, so you can when they pass to you, you basically if they have targets, you can take their targets with Super Poly before they even get the chance to activate Eradicator, if that makes sense. So you indirectly are running 4 El Shaddoll fusions with this and then the 3 Super Poly that, spoiler alert, we're running. And then the last 2 Shaddoll cards is Resh and Schism. Resh is just like Falco, it becomes the other additional copies of your other Shaddoll monsters, which when you get Resh and you get Falco online, it makes it very, very, very difficult to push through your board. Hand traps. This could honestly be any other hand trap. It's 3 Ash. This could literally be any hand trap you would want, whether it's this, DD Crow, Baylor, Imperm, or whatever. I just went with this because it's the most generic and it's early on in the format. So um, I wanted something generic to kind of just have an answer to that answers everything. Now, if you're watching this after the format's basically filtered out or whatever, you can either use this if you choose to, or whatever hand trap you see fit that's the most suited for the format or the most impactful. And then the last monster in the entire deck, if you couldn't already guessed it, is the Golden Lord because it's generic and it's free off of it's a free interruption, force to send, or you can send it off of Shaddoll Fusion, which is a great light target. And then onto the spells. Best card in this freaking game, Droplet. Droplet is just freaking amazing, and it just helps. It's so good offensively and defensively. Definitely when it comes to people trying to Valor and they're targeting your Alistair because no one ever wants to let him resolve. So you just when you're going second, just hold this and then wait until they target him, and then you use this and send an Alistair so he resolves, and then you can like flex on them even harder by making sure you use their graveyard for the fusion material. um, and then 3 Super Poly. This card is absolutely busted. So good. Not much really needs to be said. And then the other flex spot you can run is this, which would be the talents. I opted to run talents. Now, if you don't want to run talents, the only other card I can tell you that would be even even good enough to even take this place. Other than that, there's no other cards that can take this place. If you're not going to run talents, you run 2 prosperity. Do not run 3 because if you run 3 prosperity, you're just going to use prosperity to go into prosperity. I promise you. But the reason why is the prosperity. But through testing, when I've played testing with prosperity, the prosperity never really came up unless it was in a simplified game state because if you banish and then you just whiff your excavations or they ash you, you just kind of go neg. Because like severely neg. The reason why I say that is because myself personally, whenever I build decks, I like to play them at mid range. So I like utilizing every single card in my 15 card extra deck. Definitely considering Konami won't give us 16 or 20 card extra deck, which I think the game's fast paced enough now where we should have somewhere in the middle of lines of that. But I like using every single card to my advantage and banishing cards, and then the card that I'm banishing cards doesn't get resolved to get the one piece that I need. So the deck, like I said, though, between that and the deck is fairly consistent enough as it is. I want a reason to where I can go combo and they hand trap me and I still have full combo, and then use this to rip a card out of their hand to make them go -2 basically, or use this to get into my other cards. Because just as Pot of Prosperity is, you're not guaranteed what you're going to excavate. Neither is this. So basically, this is, you get more pluses off of this. On top of this, if you're going second too, you can also use this to steal their card to help push for OTK or link with it or fuse with it or whatever. So there's a lot more like utility that comes from this card than Prosperity, but Prosperity is a very good option if you want to go that route too. But like I said, I would not run two. I would not run three. Run two. And then on to the generic one-ups, we got the Called by the Grave because it's freaking amazing. Uh, Foolish Burial, and then the Harpy's Feather Duster. I'm telling you, D2D fam, I'm telling you guys, you have to respect mine in this format. If you are not respecting mine, you are going to get absolutely punished. I don't care if you go to locals and your friends say they'll never run mine. You never know, they might change their mind in the middle of like making a deck or something, or someone new might come in or something. I promise you, please respect mine. Please, 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 I beg you, respect mine. Do not let that game steal games for you for free. On top of that, this is for everything else too. But since Konami wants to be fucking annoying and not banish, yeah, literally banish, not ban Mystic Mine, you have to respect it and have main deck the out of some sorts. In Tier Elements, I still run the Galaxy Cyclone in my Tier Element deck. This is just so mandatory, this format. It's absolutely ridiculous. On top of that, it gets rid of other pesty backer too, besides just Mystic Mine. But that's 42 in the main. Not much I would really change. I like the lineups on everything. I've been playing this deck for a long, long time, and like I said, I basically have it down to a science to where I just plug cards in and out. My lists are fairly the same. I just plug a couple of utility cards in and out. Token, token, token. Onto the extra deck. We got one Magistus, which this is basically your Almirage and Secure Gardener, but you don't need Almirage or Secure Gardener because this just takes both in one. Because we're not running Purgatrio, even though Purgatrio is a good card, there's better utility cards to be ran in this format than him. He only really comes up when there's other utility cards that is not really necessary, but you just want to use it as your own utility card instead of like a super poly target or something like that. And then we got the gravity controller because it's necessary to get our fusions out of the extra monster zone, like if like our construct or our Winda or our any our app clone or something like that. This is really nice. On top of that, this just clears link zones. So like when you if you use it to attack into your opponent's link, then it will, if it's in the extra, as long as the link's in the extra monster zone, then this will just clear it, bounce them back both back to the extra deck, which is kind of nice sometimes because this counts as an interruption because you just use this to bounce their stuff back, and then you have your gravity controller again at least for the next turn. But if you need to link something off an extra monster zone again, so that part's actually really freaking good. And then the last link in the deck is Dark Charmer because Dark Charmer is just stupid and generic, and it searches Alistair. So like if you brick, if you brick or whatever, or you're in a simplified game state, but you can make a dark, you just crash and then use this to go search Alistair. So it's really good and I love it. And then besides Ecclesia being my wife, we have my other wife right here, Ulti Construct. Construct is Bay. This card is absolutely disgusting, but you don't need three between this and then the third, this and then the Squamata. You'll get enough sins to the graveyard. You'll get everything set up the way you want it, because on top of that, you also get whatever you want off of Abclone, which is the best extra deck monster in this entire deck. Because basically, if you think about it, the old head way of playing Shaddolls was we never really had a true Rota. So the way we had to get access to it was foolish in it with this and or Shaddoll Fusion or Squamata or whatever, and then just adding it back from grave with their graveyard effects. But Abclone can do that, but he can also add directly from deck, which is really nice too. So indirectly, if you need access to anything in your entire deck, you have 4 ways plus a Squamata to get instant access to it. So it acts as kind of like 4 constructs, if that makes sense. And then the one that's going to hurt a lot of people's feelings, but I promise you it's okay. The one window, you don't need more than one, because if you time it properly, when you summon this, whether you're summoning off of Shaddoll Fusion or you never really want to hard make it unless you don't want to accept on your opponent's turn, because you're just leaving it out there to get freaking what should I call it? Droplet, Chalice, Dark Ruler, everything. So you summon this on your opponent's turn in the same chain as them, special summon a monster, and you just win the game. And as long as they don't banish it, if they manage to attack over to whatever, then your Resh and everything else will be able to loop it back, and you just keep looping it from the field and back and slowing him down. And eventually, as long as you're slowing him down, they can't OTK you, because they can't as long as you're chaining your stuff probably about bringing this back. They can't OTK you, so their resources are going to get piled up, as where you can play under this very well and push for game, because you just keep looping it from the graveyard back to the field, because when this goes to grave, this will add back the Resh, and you proceed to make a giant board, try to OTK. If you can't, then set the Resh will bring this back, or even Falco can bring this back, or whatever, anything. So if you play the cards right and play the deck mid-range enough, you'll be able to play around and play through it, and just you'll be all right. I promise you. And the second one has never came up. And then for the invoked monsters, another one Makaba. The second one has like very rarely ever came up, because you're never going to hard make this anymore. A lot of I love you guys, but a lot of brain dead invoked players will just go and hard make this turn one. You should not do that unless you absolutely need to get something on board that's a negate, because you should always go Kaliga over this, because you go Kaliga and then set on Schism or El Shaddoll Fusion to make Winda, because the Kaliga will force their negation or interruption, as in Droplet, Chalice, or negation or something like that, to turn his effect off, because they need to turn his effect off to push. And in the second they do that, we just punish them with Winda. So that's the way the deck is meant to be played. So you're only going to ever make this mid to late game if you can stand to, if you can. So I never needed more than one. One Raijin, because it's very good against Sprite, and it's very good against birds, because it gives us a way to play. One Agoides, one Kaliga, Speaking to the Devil. This is it for the Invoked lineup. Invoke's basically just a utility engine. Not much needs to be said about that. Yeah, it's Invoked, for crying out loud. And then for the last three monsters in the entire extra deck is one Garua, Mud Dragon, and an Elder Entis. Entis is in there for Nadir Servant or something in our side deck, in order to kind of out floodgates and stuff like that. And it could indirectly be a super poly target too, but not really, since Punk's gone now. So because they're the only ones I think that can make synchros and XZ monsters or whatever. But yeah, I chose to run King of the Swamp over Dragostapelia, because Dragostapelia is really solid, definitely considering he can negate, and he permanently negates and manipulates levels or whatever. But the reason why I opted to not run is because the rest, if you think about it, the rest of my entire extra deck is all Omni Omni fusions, basically. So they're all generic and can be made with whatever I'm making. This between these two cover more ground than just this and Dragostapelia. These cover everything, and on top of that, if you make Mud Dragon, you can basically make its level to any. I mean, its attribute to whatever you need. So if you need a light for Shaddoll Fusion, you can just use his effect to turn him into a light, and then you make Construct, and then your Construct also for the rest of the turn is going to be unable to be targeted and stuff too. On top of that, you can use this to declare Dark, and then they can't target your Alistair when you normal summon it. So just big brain thinking that you have to think of when you're playing these cards. That's really nice aspect that it brings to the table too, that Dragostapelia can't. But that's it for the extra deck. Obviously 15. This is a tournament deck, and you know how to do tournament decks. I show the side deck. Another way to make sure we can play against birds. We got 3 Godarla. I think Godarla is going to be really good, definitely in this deck as a side deck piece, because even not against birds, it's just a good way to clear the board, and gets a wind engraved, so you also don't always have to use your Windy to make Raijin. Or you give them this, and you have Super Poly, you can just normal summon your Alistair, and if they had a set Imperm, and you have Super Poly, you could just use Super Poly on this when they try to target your Alistair to make your Raijin, and then you go get your Invocation. You can make whatever else you want from there. So there's a bunch of cool niche things that it can do. It's really nice. Then another good hand trap that's going to be good this format. I would probably run 3 if I had 3, but it's not. I don't think I should main it, because the only real deck that it hits right now is Tearlaments. Sprite, it can kind of hit, but depending on the variant, there's the adventure variant going around, and then if you have bad luck like I do, they'll just end up opening the swap frog anyway, so they'll still be able to get to totally awesome. Um, and then the Pankertops, the boy that trades 2 for 1. This card is absolutely nasty. It has been for years. It's a reason why it's at 1. And then 2 evenly matched because I can't fucking stand back row decks. So I just want to clear them and OTK them and just win. And then Rest in Frickin' Peace, Red Reboot. And I know what a lot of people are going to be like, well, why were you playing Red Reboot and then playing 3 Nadir Servant? It's because my locals loves me. My friends love me. So they allow me to play test before it was fully legal, the 3rd Nadir. So fuck you. But no, rest in peace to this. This right here can be one more of these, so you can just run 3 Cosmic. I think Cosmic's gonna be better than Twin Twister in this format because of one, you never know what back row is gonna be like necessary, and sometimes the discard does matter, but it does matter at the same time. On top of that, Runic is a deck and Eldritch is a deck, so I think people are going to go back to like the things they know if they're not going to play new decks like Eldritch and stuff. So Eldritch may make a new Arise or whatever version or new version it may be, but I would run 3 Cosmics probably. That's what I'm probably going to make the reboot. On top of that, I just can't stand back row anyway, so you might as well make it a new back row card. And then 2 more Nadir Servant. Ultimate Slayer. This card is basically Nadir Servant because it just outs almost anything and everything, and it doesn't have the drawback that Nadir does. So you basically, if you're playing against a fusion deck, you can use this to send Ab Cologne, bounce her card back, and then use Ab Cologne's effect to go off, and you're still not locked out of the extra deck, so you can just make plays. So indirectly, in certain matchups, this could be a starter. It's really cool. Also, earlier on in the side decking part, I don't know if I mentioned, but I fucking hate back row. 2 Lightning Storm to round it off for the extra side deck. Lightning Storm just breaks boards, clears the back row, clears the front row if you're playing against a link deck, and you just push for game. Not much needs to be said about that. This card's busted. Held its giant price point for the longest time, but it's a lot more easier to get now. So you should definitely be able to pick them up. They're fairly cheap compared to what they used to be. But yeah, other than that, like the side deck, you can of your choice, you can basically do whatever. What I mean by that is like see fit, but this is the most generic one that will cover all your bases. Like if you're taking it to an event, but if like you're on a budget or whatever, and you're wanting to build this deck budgetly, because the entire deck is actually budget. You can get it for probably under 200, 150 probably. Only reason I'm thinking you can even run it that high is the droplets, but that which is absolutely mandatory. But the rest of it you could probably get for 150 ish or under. I say between $100 to $200, but which is fairly nice for a deck that can compete to be tier 1. So that's it for the main deck, side deck, and extra deck, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed the deck profile. I've been talking to a couple of you guys about the upcoming decks and stuff that you all like to see, want me to update. Since the ban list, I am working on them, I promise. You know me, I'm not the first one to get them out there, but I try to be the best one to get them out there. But if there's any other decks you'd like to possibly see, let me know in the Discord or let me know down below, and I can see what I can do. I can't guarantee anything, but I'll definitely see what I can do. But with that being said, I hope you all love the video. I hope you all have a wonderful night, morning, evening, whenever you're watching this video. I hope you all are having a lovely evening, day, whatever. I already said that. I just need to go to bed. I hope you all have a wonderful day and you're staying safe. It's your boy Drip, signing out. Peace. Till next time, my guys. Good dueling.